Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on institutionalizing systems and procedures. My name is Emily Sellers, and I serve as the Degrees When Due Project Manager with IHEP. And so before I go ahead and introduce today's exciting lineup of speakers, I have a few real quick housekeeping items to review. So you will have an opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation by using the Q&A or chat feature that can be found in the bottom toolbar of your screen. We'll also provide an opportunity at the end of the presentation to go through any questions via chat or Q&A. So as another reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available for future viewing in the LMS under the support section and webinars. And now it is my sincere pleasure to introduce today's first presenter, Dr. Kate Mahar. So Kate serves as the Dean of Innovation and Strategic Initiatives and Director of the Lumina Talent Hub and Scale at Shasta College. She is also one of our fantastic DWD coaches serving California and Colorado. So now I will turn it over to Kate to get us started. Kate?
Welcome. Thank you so much, Emily. And thanks everyone for being here today. It's a really exciting time with Degrees When Due, and we're just bringing on the latest cohort. And so I imagine there's some brand new folks on this call, but then also folks that have been in the work for a while. And the way we set up this webinar is that we wanted to tell some stories. We all got into Degrees When Due to try to figure out how better we can support students and what can we do our campuses to keep folks from falling out, and then to re-engage students that possibly have fallen out of our pathways. And today's webinar is going to allow us to tell that story from different perspectives. The first is going to be the telling of the story from the institution's perspective. And we have wonderful colleagues from two different institutions that'll tell the college story of their process with Degrees When Due and how that led to different systems and procedures that they've enhanced in their own colleges. And then we'll transition to tell the story from different positions. For Degrees When Due to be effective, as you know, you need different people, different roles around campus to be at the table trying to figure this out together. So after we tell the story of campuses, we'll tell the story of Degrees When Due from the perspective of different roles. We have an instructional dean, dean of A&R, and a DWD coordinator at a campus. We'll get to hear how this went from their eyes. And then of course, the whole purpose is to really reveal the story of the student, to tell the story of the student journey of what's been happening for them at your campus, at our campus, and how do we get them across the finish line so that they can achieve their own goals. So that's how the day is going to lay out. We also have an opportunity at the end of this session for questions and answers, whether that be at the campus level story or by the role. So with that, let's dig in. And Emily, I'll turn you over to introduce the first video. So actually, I'll just go ahead and introduce folks. So part one, we have three Degrees When Due journeys towards institutional change. Nora Morris from Anoka-Ramsey Community College will tell the story of their process. Carla Hardestry from Adams State University has a fascinating story of how their campuses handled the Degree When Due work and what are the outcomes. And then the Shasta College will tell our story as a team. And again, the position-based perspective of Degrees When Due will be the next stage of the journey. Liz Cohn, our coordinator, Buffy Tanner, Associate Dean of Student Services, and Stacy Bartlett, our incredible instructional dean, who may or may not sing her portion. Let's start with a video from Nora. So I actually can people hear that? Looks like we're having some challenges with sound. Okay, so as we work on that, we can jump to Carla. Carla, you are ready to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Kate. I'm our executive director for enrollment management at Adams State University. And we are the only school in Colorado participating in this. Colorado has a reverse transfer program. So I don't know if others in the state were interested, but we've done other initiatives with IHEP. And when I learned about this, we were just starting to really think about how we could re-engage adult learners in our community and reach out to stopped out students. I mean, it'd been on our radar for a long time, but we didn't have any structure around it, weren't sure how to approach it. And then I got an email about Degrees When Due and emailed Emily and said, hey, can we join? This was just about a year ago because they had already started the second cohort. And she allowed us to join and lined us up with Kate as a coach. And Kate has just been phenomenal. And I think that's one of the best parts of this program is just to have somebody to check in with regularly and answer questions. So I pulled a team together, and primarily it's been our institutional effectiveness director. She pulled our initial data to figure out which students do we want to include in this work. And she whittled that down to our universe of interest. And then that universe of interest kind of sat out there in limbo for a while. I didn't really have staff who had the time available to dig in and do the work. And then with COVID, for us, I guess a plus would be that I had an admissions counselor who couldn't do her regular travel, and she had just graduated from Adams State in May, and we had hired her in our department, and she had the time. Well, I think she had the time, maybe she didn't really have the time, but she went through our universe of interest list all summer long and reached out to students and developed communication based on the communication templates that Degrees When Due had in the LMS. So there was a lot of really good structure in place and some templates. All the information we needed to get this going was there for us. And so Diane started contacting students. And when she first started looking up students in our system, we quickly learned that a lot of the students that we'd pulled into our universe of interest were incarcerated students. So we have a prison college program where we have bachelor's degrees and an MBA delivered through correspondence for incarcerated individuals. And we ended up accidentally pulling them into our population. We didn't think to exclude them, but it ended up being a good thing. We found about 40 incarcerated students who had over 90 credits, but they had stopped out. And so that was an interesting finding in the work as we started digging into student accounts and reaching out to students. And those students, they didn't have phone numbers listed. So that was a first indicator, but then we did have them marked in our system as incarcerated. So that was something that came up that was a project that kind of opened the door for more questions. Like now we want to know, why did they stop out? My initial hunch is that they can't pay tuition and keep going. So we might look for funding sources. I want to survey them. So I'm working with our correspondence education program on that. And then our admissions counselor who reached out to all these students, we do have some of them coming back to finish their degrees, but in that work, a lot of them couldn't come back to campus. And so we're looking for online options for them. Our interdisciplinary studies degree is going to end up being a fit for some of them. And now our next step in this next round of Degrees When Due, our plan is to go back and see if we can add more students to our universe of interest, but we really want to dig into all the notes that were taken on all of these student records and in the communication and outreach, the notes that were taken by our admissions counselor, so that we can see if there are trends or institutional barriers or policies. Are there things that were beyond the student's control, but within the institution's control to change so that we can minimize students stopping out and leaving? Can we find a different degree track for them before they leave, those sorts of things? So now I want to spend some time, pull my team back together and see, like, let's go through these notes and see if we can find some good trends. And Kate has provided a lot of examples from her work in this and just been there kind of as a guide the whole way through. So again, huge props to Kate for keeping us moving along on this. And it's been fun. And our admissions counselor, when I talked to her a couple weeks ago for a report that was due in September, I said, you didn't know it'd be this much work, did you? But she enjoyed it too. just learning about our students and the circumstances they face and such. So I guess that's kind of a summary of the steps we've taken the last year to get to where we are now. And we still have a lot of work left to go in this, but it's been fun and rewarding, and also helps us better understand where students hit challenges and roadblocks.
Thank you so much, Carla. We learned so much from you and your work in how you identified a whole subgroup of folks that were being impacted through your incarcerated population. And then also having that interdisciplinary degree, we found that so many students possibly didn't get the degree that they were going for, but maybe earned another one. So we were able to take that lens that you identified and apply it to our work. So thank you so much, Carla, for all your work. So it looks like we have Nora ready to go. And this is Nora from Anoka-Ramsey Community College.
Hi, my name is Nora Morris. I'm the Dean of Institutional Effectiveness at Anoka-Ramsey Community College. We are located in a suburb outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we learned through the Degrees When Due process. As you know, you're digging into it. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of data involved, but we learned a lot. We were able to pull the data together. We looked at students in our liberal arts program, which is our largest gen ed degree that you can earn. So we pulled that data together and we looked at, of all the students that had over 60 credits, why did they not graduate? And we could start to see the gaps. We could see, like we anticipated, there were a lot of students that hadn't taken a math class because it's well documented, the math phobia out there. But we also saw some other things. We saw, for example, that we have a wellness requirement, and we saw that that was the only thing that kept a large group of students from graduating. We took that information. Our requirement reads right now that you need to have 3 credits from any 2 wellness courses. Well, it's kind of hard to do that. You almost need 4 credits or 5 credits by the time you get your 2 courses. So the this or that, and it just confused students. So we went to the department. This had been sort of an openly discussed thing on campus, but we never had the real data to document it. So this allowed us to document that, show the impact it had, how many students it was preventing from graduating. And the faculty, we took it to the dean's group and then we took it to the department and said, what do you think? Can we do something with this? They reviewed the data with us. It really drove home that this was a barrier for students. We, as the college, told them we were still very supportive of a wellness requirement given this day and age and the physical health of the American population. We know wellness for life is extremely important, but we needed to rework it. And so they have agreed this fall, they are going back, they are presenting a proposal to our academic affairs this fall. We have not seen it yet, but they have agreed that they will clean that up, clarify it, and probably minimize it to just 3 credits. However you get those 3 credits, or 2 classes. I'm not sure which one they're going with, but not the this or that or this. So we're going to clean that up, and hopefully that will make a difference for us. The other big thing we found was we took our group of students in our universe of interest. We looked at them. People were shocked at how many students had boatloads of credits. I mean, well over 100 credits, and we offer 60 credit degrees. So it seemed wrong that you should have that many credits and not a degree. So we started looking at them, and we were able to, when we did our degree audits, we found over 100 students that had met all of the graduation requirements but had not graduated. So we wrote them letters, asked them to opt out, otherwise telling them we would post the degrees, and we were able to post those degrees. We now have built that in as a process where we do that at the end of every term. We take students who did not apply for graduation but have over 60 credits and run them through our degree audit to see if they have met the requirements, and if so, we reach out to them. We think that that's a service to both our college because we get to post more graduates, but more importantly to those students, because they have left, but now they can leave with a degree, and that's a life changer. So as you do your work with Degrees When Due, I hope you are also able to see how the data pulls some of these, the anecdotal evidence that people have talked about for years. I hope the data helps you to demonstrate the impact it has and allows you to move to the action step of making some of these changes. I think we're all in it for the right reasons, and let's get those students graduated. Thanks.
Great. So thank you. We've heard from two colleges with very common themes. And again, Shasta is just going to keep telling that same story. Shasta College, we're in far northern California, where you've probably seen a lot of the news on the different fires. We're safe where we are, but our neighbors to the north and the east have had a tough time. But we're in far northern California. We're a community college. And in our particular region, 1 out of 3 adults have some college, but no degree. So when the Degrees When Due opportunity came on, we jumped on it because we recognized that 33% of the adults in our region had started their education, but didn't get across that finish line. Next slide, Emily. So our goal, once we decided to get involved with Degrees When Due, was to bring people to the table. How do we get the different perspectives across campus around the table to take a look at what was going on for the students that started at Shasta College but didn't complete? One of the key things that we had right from the start was administrative buy-in. From day one, we decided this was going to be equity focused to really disaggregate our data and recognize not only barriers, but are there certain barriers per student group? How do we make sure folks from across the campus were working on it together? And we are fortunate enough to have a team coordinator that you'll hear from in a moment that we brought on to help shepherd all these people. Because what I often find is you can get all these great folks together, but what's going to happen in between meetings to really move the work? So this was the basis of our story, and I'll let the team tell the rest of it, especially from the perspective of the role that they have and what each perspective was so key to making changes on our campus. So we'll get to hear what that meant for each of these folks. Next slide, Emily. So our president, Dr. Joe Weiss, this is a quote from him: "The Degrees When Due project is the right thing to do for students. Degrees When Due has provided an additional focus and specific methodology to achieve our primary institutional goal of increasing educational attainment in our communities." We started this process with a very supportive president, but as soon as we brought him the data of actually how many students that we were talking about, he went all in. He said it was like a kick in the gut to learn about the people that had fallen out, and really committed to making sure that we could identify those gaps and try to reach out to students to bring them back. So with that, I'll hand it over to Liz Cohn, our extraordinary Degree When Due coordinator.
All right, thank you, Kate. Great. Okay, so basically my job has been to pull everyone together and keep the initiative moving along. And I just want to point out that we have called it an initiative throughout because we've dabbled in calling it a program or a project. And really the initiative is a good reminder of we want this work to continue into and be incorporated into our everyday lives when we come to work. And so, so we've stuck with initiative. Anyway, so we pulled the team together. Everyone on our team were lead decision makers. We decided to hold monthly meetings. And so my main task was to make sure we were prepared to take action at each of these meetings. So for example, if we were needing to reach out to students who have earned a degree, well, who's going to write that correspondence or look at the LMS to get instructions or examples? And so that's what I would do. I would organize it all. I'd bring it to the meeting so everyone at the meeting could look it over and edit it, and then we would have an outcome from the meeting to be able to move forward. Another thing that I would do, that I would suggest doing, is I would ask each individual to provide some sort of update, especially if they said they would do something at the last meeting. I would make sure to write their name on the agenda and then give them a little heads up. Hey, I'm going to have you report out to the group next week. And I think that just helped keep people accountable and helped move things along maybe a little faster than they otherwise would have, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in your normal everyday work, and then to have this on top of it, it could easily get overlooked. So I just kept people moving along. So in our first meetings, we went through the LMS. We sat down together, we pulled it up on the screen, went through questions. And then really our first big decision was, what data are we going to pull and what does our universe of interest look like? And so I'm going to share with you our initial data. Do you want to go to the next slide, Emily? So this is our initial data. We decided to do a 5-year look back. So we started this in December of 2018. And we pulled data from fall 2013 to spring 2018. Students who had 45 or more units with a minimum GPA of 2.0 and obviously had not earned any sort of degree. And our initial findings, we did both tracks. So for adult re-engagement, we found 2,870 students. And for our reverse transfer, we found 383 students. Of the 383, 143 had stopped out. So they transferred to a 4-year, never earned a degree, and are no longer enrolled. And then 195 were still enrolled at a 4-year. So going into this project, like Kate said, we had buy-in from administration and really all of the leaders that were sitting at the table. But once we got the numbers and saw how many people this truly was affecting, it just really hit home. And I feel like everyone was like, oh yeah, we got to do something about this. So I think having that hard data really, really helped. I also want to say that after the initial look back, time had gone by, and then we're all of a sudden going, oh no, there's degrees when due students that were in, so it would have been fall 2018 to spring 19. And so anyway, so we were working out processes on how to make sure these students are not falling through the cracks each year. And it's taking us some time to review all these students. And as we go along, all of the changes that we've incorporated, hopefully we're going to catch them each year. So that is the goal. So Emily, you can go to the next slide. I'll let you guys read this quote, but I'm going to hand it off to Buffy Tanner, who can introduce herself because she has a very long title and she has worn many hats within our initiative.
Thank you, Liz. My name is Buffy Tanner, and I'm the Interim Associate Dean for Student Services, which oversees admissions and records and financial aid at Shasta College. I've been in this position since February of 2020. I don't recommend starting a new job a month before a global pandemic hits. Some career advice from me to all of you. And but the person who was in this role before me was part of this committee from the get-go with degrees when due. And I was also part of this committee from the get-go because my prior role on campus, I was the director of our ACE program, which stands for Accelerated College Education, a program that is started in 2016, geared towards working adults and features, among other things, 8-week classes, which are predominantly online, and a robust case management approach to working with the students in that program. So that program really fits particularly for those re-engagement students who need to come back and quickly hop in to finish that last class or two to finish their degree. All right, next slide, Emily, please. So we wanted to kind of drill into some of the nitty gritty of how we did a couple aspects of the work and what were some of our initial findings. To start with the degree evaluations, as Liz pointed out, we had 2,870 students potentially in the re-engagement pool, and that was just too large a number to start with. So we did apply a couple more filters and got it down to a more manageable group of about 600 students. And we decided to focus on those as tier 1 students. And to do those evaluations, we solicited the assistance of our existing, we have 2 admissions and records evaluation specialists, and also the part-time counselor who works specifically with the ACE program. So those were the team of 3 people who were doing the degree evaluations. And between the 3 of them, they typically spent about 8 to 10 hours per week on the Degrees When Due degree evaluations. Sometimes that was as overtime, and sometimes that was part of their regular weekly duties. It depended on the time of year. The tool that we use for degree evaluations is Colleagues Degree Audit, which is certainly handier than taking each student's transcript and comparing it to catalog requirements, but it does have the limitation that you can only do the evaluation on one program at a time, and that has to be the active program in the colleague system. So it's very time consuming, and what would happen is our evaluators would run that initial program, what was already in the system for that student. If the student met those degree requirements, great. If they didn't, they would scan the transcript with their human eyeballs, and because they're all experienced and very good at what they do, they'd be able to say, you know what? That looks like they might meet the requirements for this degree. And so they would insert that particular degree as an active program and then rerun the degree evaluation. Sometimes it hit the mark, sometimes it was off a little bit. So it, again, time consuming. But they wouldn't just give up after one. Oh, they didn't meet that one. And then they would log their results in an Access database for each student, very specifically. Either they earned this particular degree, or they are closest to this degree, but they're missing courses A, B, and C to complete the degree. This was critical for the next piece, which was the outreach. And we quickly realized that we couldn't have those 3 people doing the outreach to the students because one, it's a different skill set than the skills that those folks have. And also, if we had them taking the time to reach out to students and then students reaching back to them, it would take them away from the work of doing the degree evaluations and just kind of bring everything to a grinding halt. So and then we have our regular team of admissions and records frontline folks, which during the busy times of the year, we can get into a situation where it might take a couple days to get back to a student. Sorry about the phone. So we realized we needed to identify a person who would be the primary contact for Degrees When Due. So we hired a 28-hour per week temporary staff person. We created a unique email address, we created a unique phone number, and that was the person who was going to be the point person to run interface with these students so that we could respond quickly to those students. We had already lost these students once. We didn't want to reach out to them, have them try to re-engage, and have them fall through the cracks again. That was not going to happen. So between that person working closely with our evaluators and the information in the Access database, we were able to customize email messages that merged with the data in the Access database to create personalized emails that would be pushed out to students that either told them, you earned this degree, and we backdated it to the last term that the student was enrolled. As a committee, we decided that was really important to make sure that students earn their degree when they earn their degree. Or it let the student know you are this close to a degree and you very specifically need a social science GE and a math class, etc., whatever they needed. We followed up those initial emails with phone calls to each and every student. So again, that was Matt, that temporary staff person who was pushing out those emails, making those phone calls, receiving emails back, and receiving calls from the students. One of the initial outcomes is that we quickly realized that we wanted to award these students their degrees. We wanted to be able to tell them, you earn this degree, rather than say to them, hey, it looks like you've earned this degree. Do you want it? Let us know if you want it. Instead, we wanted to push out the information, you earned it. Tell us if you don't want it. And in all of the students that we evaluated, one student told us that they didn't want their degree. And in order to be able to give the students the option to opt out, we actually needed to update our policy on graduation applications. And so now that policy has language in it that says Shasta College reserves the right to award your degree if you have completed the requirements. So that was really key, not just for this initiative, but going forward to some of our changes in our graduation application processes. The other big discovery is in that CIS requirement. Like Nora at Anoka-Ramsey, we found that a full third of our students had otherwise met their degree requirements except for one requirement, and that was a computer literacy requirement. So we had these students who had made it through 60 or more units of college coursework. Some of those courses were online courses, and we were saying to them, well, doesn't look like you know how to use computers, and that just didn't make sense to us. So that led, in conjunction with the rest of the work that we were doing, to needing to have some conversations across campus with our administrators, our faculty, and other stakeholders. And here to talk about the communication piece is Stacy Bartlett. So Emily, if you could go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Another quote from Joe Weiss, who's been just a phenomenal supporter of this work. And then on to Stacy.
Thanks, Buffy. It's really exciting to hear everybody's perspective and how they come to this work. So I'm an instructional dean, and my particular areas are arts, communication, social sciences, and world languages. About 16 different disciplines subsumed within there. However, prior to coming to Shasta College, I was also a faculty member for 15 years. I was the academic senate president, and I was on the curriculum committee, et cetera, et cetera. So I have this wealth of knowledge in terms of how systems work in moving the needle. But before I get to there, I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm so incredibly passionate about this project, initiative. So I grew up in Shasta Lake City, which is a little tiny town north of Redding. And I was a Shasta College dropout. So my story is dropout to dean, and I won't tell you the whole story, but you can probably surmise a little bit of it when I tell you I moved out of the house when I was 15 and a half, and I moved into a dam shack. And if you don't know what a dam shack is, when they were building Shasta Dam, they put in these Pecky cedar houses that were supposed to be temporary. Long story short, now I'm a dean. I really feel that this is a wonderful program for our community. And so you all are familiar with cultural icon and galactic leader Yoda. And Yoda said, do or do not, there is no try. And that might be true for different people, but certainly not those in my socioeconomic condition. Like many of our rural and also urban students, we don't have the pathway from here to college degree. And so what happens is we stop out for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's because we don't understand the language of college. Maybe it's because we don't understand the requirements. Maybe we don't understand what it takes to be a college student and an adult. That would be me. So there's just so many reasons that we stop out. So when I saw this opportunity to serve on this committee come up, I jumped on it. As Kate said, 1 in 3 in our community have some college and no degree. And that was certainly me until I was 8 years old. And I went back to school. And I have all the gray hair to prove it. So what I brought to the table were three different pockets of information that I could share. One was my life prior, where I was in sales and marketing and training, and I had done some work with student services. One was around communication, and then one was around understanding the systems. For those of you in the California Community College system, you understand AB 1725, which allows us to have the 10.1, the 10+1, and that's the way we have to maneuver in order to make change to degree outcomes and so on and so forth. So let me start with the training piece, because I was passionate about making sure that our student services folks understood that they had a tremendous impact on not just the students they were serving, but on their own community and particularly perhaps their own families. And so what we did was we sat down and adopted this sort of process of giving them an overview of the genesis and the importance of degrees when due. And what was important in the training that we did, in particular in rural Northern California, was we needed to situate this in nonpartisan outcomes. This was not that we were granting these folks a degree. This was a nonpartisan group that was helping us look at our data so that we could have students earn their degree. And that was super important. They needed to know that this was non-biased. We have many folks in rural California and up in the northern state who are very, very liberal, and we've got some who are very conservative. We needed to make sure we created a non-biased platform for them to see this work as the meaningful opportunity that it is. So that was the first thing that we sort of did, was educate them about IHEP and this program. Then we talked about how did they see themselves in the work itself and the 4 different platforms. So it was welcoming and onboarding. Were they part of that group? Or were they identifying the students who were eligible for this? Or were they part of engaging the students? Or were they in the sustainable practices? And so how did they see themselves fitting into this work? And then finally, one of the big things that we wanted them to do was to personalize this work. And so because I was a college dropout, I was able to talk about the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. And what that means is, if I give you the number 40, you probably won't know what that means. But when I did the training and I said, what's the number 40? Some of them thought it was my age, and I was very thankful. But the reality is 40 was the little handout I was about to give them with just the initial acronyms that I could come up with. 40 acronyms, and I had them work together to try to decipher, what does this mean? And there were so many acronyms, they had no idea. So then I said, okay, well, let's just imagine that 15 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you went to college and maybe, you didn't really know what you were doing. If I say to you, well, go talk to the dean of ACSS, is that going to mean anything to you? If I say, fill out your FAFSA, how about that? Nah. If I say, did you earn an EW or an FW? And so we needed to make sure that our student services folks could really identify. Then what we did was, after we did this little kind of understanding the language, then we brought it back to personalizing it. And I asked them in groups to think about how 1 in 3 have some college degree. What impact would that have on the community? What impact would that have on them? And I was blown away by how many people said, oh my gosh, my mom can do this. She can get her degree. I expected that they would understand that there would be an uptick for some folks who would earn a degree and get a spike in pay, but I didn't understand how personal they were going to take this and how they were truly going to bring it literally home. That created this sort of culture around this, a very enthusiastic and exciting part of what we were doing. So after that, we realized that, with the advertising that was going on, with how we were talking about this, that we were missing a piece. And the piece that we were missing is that the faculty and the board of trustees didn't know about this, because the work was happening, but it was happening in a specific arena on campus. So Kate, Buffy, Liz, and Becky, who used to be part of this, put together a presentation. And it was September of 2019 that they put together a presentation, and they educated the board of trustees exactly the same way. Here's the genesis of the project. Here's why it's impactful. Here's how it's going to bring change to our community. Here's why it's powerful and important at this time. And what some of you might not know is that in 2018, we had gone through, or 2017, excuse me, we had gone through the car fire. And so Kate had to work really hard to get an MOU for us to participate in this, despite the fact that we were dealing with one of the most tragic wildfires in the history of California at that time. So she was doing all of this back work, even while we were dealing with having been an evacuation center, dealing with people who were suffering with the tragedy of losing all of their homes and potentially deaths in the family. So she was doing a lot of that back work. And so this is situated in this optimism of what we can do for our community, overlaid this tragedy. So at the end of their training, at the end of their educating the board, I think that this speaks to what we wanted to do, which was to create this culture, to inculcate the importance of this. And so one of our board members said this at that meeting. He said, "This speaks to the culture I see here. When I first started, this wasn't the culture." He said, "We are now operating the culture with all the good work that you are doing." And so the Board of Trustees saw that we no longer blamed our students for not getting a degree, right? Do or do not, there is no try. No, that is not the case for all of us. And so they recognized that this empowerment, this opportunity to give people a fresh start and to bring them back was super important. So then from there, we needed to make sure that the faculty were part of the process and part of the decision-making, which brings us back to what Buffy said in terms of the CIS. Did you know what CIS meant? Okay, Computer Information Systems, by the way, right? So what happened is it was a course that students had to take, and many of them, as Buffy said, didn't have that. So how then, if it's part of the 10+1, and it is, 10+1 grants faculty the purview over certain aspects, and one of them is degree and certificate requirements. So it was on our faculty, it was incumbent on them to recognize this value as well. And so after the board meeting, then we started to take this, what I refer to as dog and pony show, around to the different constituent groups. So it went to the academic senate. We had one-on-one sessions with the faculty of the computer science department. We showed them the data, we talked to them about it, and eventually a very long process. The faculty in the computer science arena decided that they would modify the degree outcomes they wanted to see, and we were able to do away with that requirement. They provided a test so that they were still getting the meaningful outcome they wanted, but just not through the regular process of taking this class. So all said and done, it was a really wonderful and important initiative I'm so proud to be part of. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about this. And if I was gonna play the guitar and do the song I was gonna play was "Give Me One Reason to Stay Here." Little Tracy Chapman classic from back in the day. So thanks so much for having me. And now I think I turn it back over to lovely, talented Buffy.
Thank you, Stacy. Stacy's story of leaving Shasta College prior to earning her degree is obviously not a unique story. This is 1 in 3 adults over the age of 25, some college, no degree. And so it was really, truly a moral imperative for us to do something about this. Emily, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. But as Liz mentioned, this is an initiative, it's not a project, it's not a program. The whole idea was to take what we've learned through this experience and incorporate it into our regular routines and our regular processes. And so sustainability was always something that was part of our conversation as a committee. And it's okay, we're doing this work, but how do we continue it? It would have been pretty easy to say, oh, we took this 5-year snapshot, we got this data on students, we discovered that some of them had earned their degrees, yippee, some of them came back, took a class or two, finished their degree. Isn't that lovely? Oh, we all feel so good. Let's move on to the next project. Nope, we have to make sure that what we learned comes into our regular processes. And so I'm going to hit some highlights on some of the sustainability aspects. Number 1, that degree audit. As I mentioned, colleagues' normal degree audit is incredibly labor intensive. And so immediately we recognized that it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable even in the normal course of our regular degree evaluations. It just takes too long. And so because IT was also at the table on our committee, we immediately could start talking about how do we build a more robust degree audit program so that rather than run a student's records through one degree, we can run a student's records through all programs, all 144 certificates and programs, and see what their requirements fulfill or how close they are to which programs. And so IT has been working steadily on that. And in conjunction with that, IHAP has been working with the California Community Foundation, the California Community College Foundation they're also working on an automated degree audit. And so our IT department has been talking with the state to learn from each other so that we can build it faster, stronger, better. The next thing is the idea of pre-evaluation of degree requirements. So our old process was you submit your degree application the term you're going to graduate. And it sits there until the term is done, grades come in, our evaluators review the student's records, and at that point, discover that, oh, you know what, you didn't meet your degree requirements. And the old method was that students just got an email or a letter that said, you didn't meet your degree requirements, nothing else. The student has walked across the stage, they've told everybody in the world, I'm graduating. And instead they just get this message, no, you didn't. That is terrible. So we have done a couple things to rectify that. Number one, we established a pre-evaluation application window. So rather than submit your application in the last term, you submit your application the term before you plan to graduate, and our evaluators are able to do a pre-evaluation and give you a heads up before you register for your last term. Either you're on track with what you've done and what your ed plan shows that you plan to do, or you're not on track. But if you modify your ed plan and you add this course or you swap out that course in your last term, you will be on track. So students get this proactive message about what they need to do in their last term. And then when the evaluators do their final evaluation, after those last term grades are posted, not only is the final evaluation process faster, there are no surprises for the students, unless they fail a class, which shouldn't be a surprise, but sometimes is, right? Okay. Eventually, the idea is that this more robust degree audit tool will be able to be made available to students on a student-facing side. So students can go ahead and throw whatever program or degree at the degree audit tool, and they can see a dashboard showing that, oh, hey, you're 65% done with this particular program, and what you need to do to complete it is A, B, and C. So eventually we might get to the point where we can eliminate the pre-evaluation process, that work happens in admissions and records, because students would have access to that information up front. But also it means that we can do more proactive work, like what, now I can't remember if it was, I think it was Nora was saying, is that they run their students who have achieved X number of units through their degree audit system and proactively push out messages to students to say, hey, either you're this close to finishing this degree or you're done with this degree. We're awarding it. If you don't want it, let us know. The other sustainability piece is staffing. As I mentioned, we had a part-time temporary staff member as our primary point person, hired on Lumina funds. When you hire somebody on grant funds, eventually that grant ends. Although if Lumina wants to fund us for the rest of our lives, we're totally happy with that. But what we're doing now is we're doing cross-training between that temporary staff person and our permanent staff members in admissions and records, so that there's basically handoff to somebody who is in a permanent role who will take on that work. The other thing is our annual calendar. Now we have much cleaner windows of time laid out for the students and for our staff and for the campus to have that expectation of the pre-evaluation window, the final evaluation window, and when students get into that final evaluation window, if they don't hit the target, the communication that they get, rather than just, you didn't do it, sorry, is very, very clear to say, you didn't meet your degree requirements because of X. But you know what? We evaluated your records against this other degree. You have met that degree. We'll award that if you want it, or you can go back, or let us know. We'll push your degree application to the next term if you're still working on your original degree. Again, once that automated degree audit tool is complete, that's going to be a huge game changer in terms of sustainability, and will allow for some really creative, proactive work to be able to communicate with students more on the front end than on the back end. So those are some of the sustainability measures we have put into place and are putting into place. As everybody has mentioned, this has been an incredibly satisfying initiative to work on, and the changes that we've made to our systems, our policies, our procedures have really sort of revolutionized the work, and the people who have been most intimately involved in the work are evaluators, or degree evaluators, and the staff member who got to communicate with the students. It is extraordinarily happy work when you get to tell a student, hey, guess what? You actually have your degree. They're pretty happy to hear from you. So we wanted to open it up. Kate, I'm passing the baton back to Kate.
You're muted, Kate.
I said, thank you so much to Shasta and to Carla and our colleague Nora. As a coach, I get to work with many colleges, and just as you heard multiple themes today, there's definitely themes that I keep seeing that's coming out the Degree When Do work. So as you launch on this journey, there's just a couple questions to think about that tend to be trends across colleges. And here's some questions to ask. Did students earn a degree but not receive it because of timelines or unclear policies for degree conferral? Is what was preventing student success some sort of policy at your campus that can be changed? Are there unclear curriculum requirements that become barriers? Nora's example was perfect. People didn't know how to get 4 units of a health and wellness. Do you have a curriculum requirement that may no longer be relevant that's preventing student success? Like Shasta, the computer requirement was so important 15 years ago, not so much today. For students that didn't qualify for the degree sought, is there a way to see if they've earned a different degree, as we've learned from our colleagues at Adams State? Have they actually earned something in interdiscipline or liberal studies? What is the avenue back for students that have just a few courses that they're missing, as Buffy was talking about? And are you making sure that you're not inviting students or adults back to the same program model that didn't serve them well in the first place? So inviting them back to your institution that maybe didn't figure out how to better serve adults, or doesn't offer courses in the time that they can, wouldn't be the most effective. So these are just buckets to think about as you move forward. It can seem overwhelming from where you're sitting right now, especially as you're beginning, but as you get your data and you look at your data, these things will present itself along the way. And of course, you have support from IHEP and from your coaches and from your peers as we all move forward on these journeys. So last slide, Emily. The last part of the Shasta College story. Over 38% of the people that we identified in our first batch actually qualified for degree and now have degrees. Over 20% of the folks in the reverse transfer pool have gotten degrees. These are human lives. This is the end of that story for that student. They cross the line and they have a degree. And of course, the beginning of a whole new story for that individual. And more importantly, we have policies in place to keep people from falling through the cracks and a way to invite them back if they do. So that's the Shasta College story. We do have a little time for questions. So here's the crowd. You can also, Carla's still on the line if you have a question for Adams State.
Just fantastic. Thank you so much to Kate, Carla. I'll include Nora as well virtually, but Liz, Buffy, and Stacy, thank you so much for all of this. Great information, great stories. And I will be, I'd like to invite everyone. Again, we do have a few moments left. So if you do have a question, go ahead and add that to the chat or the Q&A. And Stacy can maybe close us out with a song.
This is Carla, real quick. I just want to
Carla.
say, during the kickoff a couple weeks ago or whenever that was, I really appreciated hearing we are impacting human lives, and that's just goes to show, you know, this is really important work. And I liked hearing that. I was like, oh yeah, we are making a difference. And sometimes you get so immersed in the work that you forget, like, you're changing lives for the better through education. So I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
so
Carla.
important. Thank you, Carla. Yeah, and Kate did a really great job kind of bringing that home, right? That students truly are at the heart of this initiative and the heart of the matter. So very good, Carla.
Great, thank you. Go for it, Stacy.
But I'm not really gonna play that one. Here we go.
Oh my goodness. I can honestly say I think that might be an DWD webinar series first. And be careful, Miss Stacy, we may be reaching out to you to kind of bring us home and close us out moving forward. That was just amazing. And so you can see everyone was so enthusiastic and grateful for that. That just made my day. I mean, of course, this is a great webinar as well. So just fantastic. Thank you. So again, thank you everyone so much for your time. Special thanks to Kate and her terrific lineup of co-presenters for their time, leadership, thoughtful feedback, and sharing your expertise and your talents, Miss Stacy. We would also like to give a special thanks to those on the line for your continued leadership with Degrees When Due, and I hope you enjoyed today's webinar as much as I did. And as a real quick reminder, today's webinar will be recorded and will be available in the LMS under the support section under webinars. So thank you again, everyone. Please stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. Take care.